Do you think that people are just afraid to be single? I mean, if it's not about resources,
Sure.
Obviously there's an emotional reason, most likely.
Absolutely. Well, think about it from this perspective. If you're a person in a relationship and you need to, kind of feel like you need to secure that next relationship before you even leave, what does that say about your attachment style?
Right. Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we are talking about monkey branching. For anyone that doesn't know what monkey branching is, Todd, can you please explain that?
Well, the concept of monkey branching is essentially where one person in a relationship decides to leave the other person, but they do that in a manner in which they secure a new partner first before leaving the relationship. This is very common, especially among women, unfortunately. One of the reasons for that is that women have a lot of options in the dating market today versus men. When it comes to divorce, for example, most women are the ones that initiate that.
Yeah, I think the divorce rates right now are at 80% women are the ones that file.
Yes. Women just have so many more options available to them than most men do. And so even if a man wanted to do that, I think it would be really difficult. And so it's something that women in general have more of a capacity to do this. And again, maybe I'm being biased here, but I think if I was a guy and I had an issue in a relationship, I would really want to just talk that out, try to figure it out, what was going on. If I picked up any indications that she wasn't happy.
Yeah.
Versus thinking about finding somebody new.
Right. Well, I think that does speak to our culture too. So women definitely, I agree, women have more options out there. But I think that there is this mindset in women going around and in relationships in general where women know that if they lost their relationship for whatever reason, they could get into another relationship.
Yes.
Whereas then I hear the opposite a lot of times from men. A lot of men will joke about it when they're in a relationship and they'll say, oh my God, if I lost her, what would I do?
Yeah.
Like, I would play video games all night long. And they act like they just have no other options. But I think deep down they truly believe that. And
I think that is reality as far as it'd be much more difficult for them to obtain a relationship than a woman. And so they have a realization about that. I'd like to talk about this a little bit too, just kind of in everyday life, because it's kind of an interesting concept because in most other areas of our life, we're actually taught to monkey branch, especially when it comes to employment. I've always been taught, and I'm sure you were too, never to leave a job until you secure a new one. And then put your 2 weeks notice in.
Oh my God, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, there's survival reasons, I guess, that we do that for work.
Yes. When it comes to employer-employee type of deal, it makes more sense because I honestly believe that most employers really don't care about their individual employees. It's more about, kind of what they can do, and they can be replaceable. But when it comes to relationships, it's kind of a logical thing to do, although I think it's very selfish and immoral.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because when you leave a job, it's not like your boss is sitting there crying that you're leaving. In most cases.
Most cases, yes.
Because you are replaceable.
Yes.
But that's not how relationships are. I mean, the person that is left during a monkey branching, I mean, they're usually devastated.
Yes, because it's not easy for them. First of all, they're going to have residual feelings, most likely, because if you're devastated, that means that you cared and that you were still invested.
And I think in the long run, it does damage very much so to the person that does the monkey branching.
Yes.
I don't think that anyone that does this will end up in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the next 10 to 20 years.
Yes.
So really, ideally, you want to safeguard yourself against this, even as a woman.
Sure.
Even if you're the one sitting in a relationship and you're kind of sitting there with the attitude that you could go and get something better, that's dangerous. You should probably focus your mind and energy on your gratitude for your current partner.
Yes.
That could almost be a safeguard. That could be shutting the door, essentially, from anyone outside kind of getting in.
Yeah. Oh, I think that the main thing too is that, from any person, whether it's the woman or the man, if they're not feeling satisfied, then I think it's inherent that they talk to their partner about that and, get couples counseling and, kind of do whatever they need to do in order to try to correct it. And then if it can't be corrected, so I've done a lot of couples counseling over the years, and it's one of those things where I've helped couples amicably break up. But it's getting to the point of realizing that they're just not a good fit anymore, or that there's some fundamentally broken that can't be fixed. And they both come to that conclusion. But it's because of that process of opening up and talking about that they get to that point, and then it's a very clear split at that point.
I see. So there can be amicable splits, but
yes.
Most likely there's been a lot of counseling before reaching that point, a lot of work done in attempts to stay together.
Well, that would be the healthy way to go.
Yeah.
Because a lot of relationships you can't fix.
I know. How many people do that?
Exactly. And so the thing is that, which is ironic because almost, I would say, 95% of the cases of people that I worked with that were couples, it was the woman who was the one who dragged her husband into the session. But I see those people, honestly, as much more healthy than people who don't do it at all.
And I'm sure, like, if they share kids, they probably enter into the co-parenting stage way more smoothly.
And none of those women that I can recall ever monkey branched.
Oh, interesting. Well, they're probably already more of a healthy mindset woman, right?
Yes, because they're trying to say, that, I'm not getting my needs met or whatever, and I want to try to correct this, so let's go and talk to somebody about it. And to me, that is a sign of strength and healthiness.
Yeah.
And that's why I haven't recalled any cases that were monkey branching.
Yeah. And so many men, like, that's all they want. They would like to be dragged into counseling, I'm sure, rather than
yes, absolutely.
her not speaking up.
Yes.
And, dragging him in.
Yes.
I'm curious, like, how long would it usually take for these couples of, like, going through therapy, figure out in the end that they did need to split?
It varied, but I think that, it was something that if you really wanted to be thorough, it's one of those things where it was a process and it took some time. We both know this. Relationships are tough. They're not easy and they take a lot of work. It's very commonplace for couples to have struggles within their relationships, but it's what they do when they come into those struggles that I think really separates healthy relationships from unhealthy relationships.
Do you think that people are just afraid to be single? I mean, if it's not about resources,
sure.
Obviously there's an emotional reason, most likely.
Absolutely. Well, think about it from this perspective. If you're a person in a relationship and you need to, kind of feel like you need to secure that next relationship before you even leave, what does that say about your attachment style?
Right.
It says that I need to be in a relationship. I can't be by myself. I've known friends. I've, again, working with hundreds of people over the years. This is so commonplace. And I think it does speak to that as far as people not feeling like they can be alone. And I think it's so important that people are able to be alone because of the fact that you need to heal before you enter your new relationship. Because even if it wasn't working out anymore, it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be grief associated with the loss of that relationship.
I think that most people would agree that you need to be single for some time after a breakup. You need to heal and work on yourself. But easier said than done, I guess. I've known people that they just don't even have more than like a few weeks of singleness in between like any of their multiple relationships.
Yeah.
And I think, it does take courage to kind of assess yourself and look at that and kind of dive into like, why is that?
Yeah.
And don't let yourself reason it out that it wasn't you that was the problem, because I think that's a lot of times what people are thinking when they're exiting a relationship that didn't work out. Like if they truly believe it wasn't them, it was the other person's fault.
Yes.
They're not willing.
So based upon your personal experience, how many women have you seen that kind of, if they don't monkey branch, they get into relationships really quickly versus men?
Women do it so much faster than men.
Yes.
Yeah, women, gosh, I'm thinking about everyone I know. And I feel like it's mostly men that I know that have gone through long periods of being single.
Yes.
I can't recall any women that I know that have gone through like long periods. Well, except for one. I do know one. She's very healthy mindset, you know. She's
That's
the
probably
exception.
why, right?
She was single for like a year.
Yeah.
And, that was kind of like the statements that she was making was she knew that she needed to heal.
Yes.
And she didn't want to get into another toxic relationship. But I think that took like hitting a low, an absolute low.
Sure.
And I think people kind of get away potentially with monkey branching.
Yeah.
Or at least not having like that time to heal in between.
Sure.
Because it's not like enough of a buildup potentially of, toxic stuff that they haven't really worked out.
Yes.
But it's not good. And,
No.
And if you feel like you need that in order to recover from the past relationship.
Well, and with the new relationship, it's going to be fresh, exciting, and everybody's, on their best behavior. They're during the honeymoon stage. I've kind of always had this saying that, in the first 6 months of a relationship, you can rule somebody out, but you can't rule them in. And the reason it actually probably should be more like a year. The reason I say that is because it takes time to get to know someone.
If somebody has monkey branched and then that relationship ends, the new one ends, where does that leave the person that did the monkey branching? Because I would kind of argue that they're in the worst position now, like later on.
Yeah.
As long as the person that they left, does it right, if he just takes time and he heals from this, I think he's going to be in a way better spot than where she will be 5 years from now or even 100%, a year from now.
100%. And I've seen this play out in real life. I have a friend who this happened to, and it was really obvious because, for example, there was like hockey equipment that was like left at an apartment that she was while they were kind of doing a trial separation. And it was like so obvious. Then she left just like in the middle of the night. And, he took his time and he healed and he met someone else and they have 2 kids together and they're in a really happy relationship where the guy who she monkey branched to, they got divorced. So she has 2 divorces under her belt where he's like in this really solid relationship.
If your partner is telling you that they want to take a break, I think that's a huge red flag.
Sure.
Don't you? That they're just like, they are looking essentially for that next person or they already have that next person.
Yes.
Yep. They're testing it out, like having that extra safety.
Yes.
Which is terrible,
yes.
I think. Because then she's still, or he, either one is not being really open and honest. With what they're doing, because I'm betting in most cases when that happens, that person's not saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be dating so-and-so too while we're separated, by the way.
Of course. Yeah, because if that happens, it just, throws a complete monkey wrench in the trust because then you're not really just taking time to kind of figure things out. You're, it's obvious that you're testing it with somebody else.
Which I don't get because what if that test fails?
Well, they'll go back to the other person.
And go back and then lie? And
if the person wasn't any the wiser.
See, that's also terrible.
It is terrible, but that's what people do, though.
I know. Gosh.
And so they either will leave or they'll come back, kind of with their tail between their legs and say, oh, let's try to make it work.
Do you think that this has to do with just like they want to have that moral standing? They don't want to be the person that did wrong. So they take a break. They're technically separated.
Yes.
They can explore their other options and they still have moral ground to stand on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they didn't cheat, they were single.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's a cop-out. I think it's one of those things where if you're to the point where you need to test it out, you either need to work harder on the relationship or you need to be out.
Yeah, lean in or just out.
Yes. Not
totally
any
agree.
testing because then it's one of those things where even in the best case scenario for the person left behind, if they come back, it's one of those things where they're coming back because the test didn't work.
Exactly. It's not because they have decided they're that in love with you. It's funny because I don't know how many people take breaks nowadays, but I feel like that was the thing when I was growing up. Like when I was in college, people took breaks all the time.
Yes.
And I even almost took a break in one of my relationships back in the day. I didn't end up going through with that, but I thought it was like so common that it was like, oh yeah, we just do this
Yeah.
to see if we really care about each other. But
Well-
it's so false. Like
Yeah.
I really do. I agree that you either need to lean
Yeah.
in and stay together and work on it harder
Yes.
or just be out completely.